Whenever you're ready.
Go.
Awesome. Welcome everybody to AA reading number 4, our National Poetry Month edition. We're about to close out National Poetry Month, and it has been a wowzer. That's kind of a nerdy word, but there you go. We've been busy this year. There's been a lot like every year it gets busier because every year there's more opportunities, and that is fabulous. Let's just enjoy the poésie joie and get it out there, right? My name is Sabne Raznik, and my co-host, who is also my co-editor on AvantAppal, Dave Sykes, he handles security as far as letting people in and out, making sure we don't get Zoom bombed, and all the bells and whistles in the back. Thank you very much, Dave. And we have 4 readers today. We have Rachel Neve Midbar and John Compton. Actually, we have 3. And we have Justin Hamm. We were going to have 4, but unfortunately, one of our readers had something can come up and she couldn't join us. So instead of the usual 15-minute slots, everybody has 20 minutes tonight. Have fun with that. Because Rachel Neve Midbar is joining us from Israel, which means it's very early her time, we're going to let her read first. And that way she can do whatever she needs to do for her own self-care. But we are very appreciative that you were able to join us from 2 a.m. in Israel.
It's wonderful to be here. You want me to go ahead? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Happy National Poetry Month. I hope everybody was just imbued with poems every day. I guess I will start from reading from my 2020 pandemic baby, Salam of Birds, which came out in January 2020, just before the pandemic. And I was not able to do, just a few online readings just with the family. And I'm in the middle of a PhD. A lot was going on. So I was never able to give the care to this book, but I will read a few poems from that. And then I'm going to move on to my manuscript in progress, which is right now called According to His Will, but I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So let me start with a couple of poems. This one is called Drive. We know nothing, only that the curtains fly like sails, the earth keeps spinning, tilts over and back. Rains come, leaves shrivel and die. The snow gathers, then melts away. And still I smell the cigarette from the car in front of me, and night blooming jasmine that holds me like a woman I once loved, who sometimes I still dream about. A cloud of pewter smoke billows out of Husan, the explosion of a car, or a house, or a life. The light changes from yellow to red. Soldiers at the checkpoint stand death chill, wax statues watch us go by with lifeless eyes. A dog stands at attention next to the road, his black ears pointed at the sky. So this book, Salam of Birds, is a book of witness about what it's like to live in, what it was like for me to live in Israel, raise my kids here, see them become soldiers, get to know and love Palestinians along the way, and to touch their lives, to understand the history of the Jewish people, which reverberates back far as we can see time in this place. A funny story, I took my kids to live for a few years around the early aughts in the States. I was working on Wall Street, and when they were like taken to Philadelphia to see a bell that was 250 years old, they were like, so? Because here, you walk up to some aqueduct and I said to my son, when was this built? He's like, in the year 7. So So history here is long, and I'll cover that a little bit in this poem, which is called What the Light Reveals. This is a poem written in Har Hazeitim, which is a large cemetery in East Jerusalem, a large Jewish cemetery in East Jerusalem. Many Jews want to be buried there because it faces the gate that the Messiah will come through. And it's like, if you're in Har Hazeitim, you'll be first to get to the world to come, kind of thing. What the Light Reveals. Marble boxes cover this hill, graves crumbled and aged, the color of teeth, row after row facing east. Buried here are you who will rise first, call back to the others, enter the world of endless life. Your names echo through generations, like the lamplighter who walks torch in hand, moves slowly from one grave to the next, sending a glow into the darkening night. Or perhaps just a match set to a wick of pure olive oil, the light clean and clear as a summer day, sunlight so bright we hide our eyes, and fruit that ripens only in the long heat of the summer sun. Fruit whose names define us: Tamar, Te'ina, Rimon, Zayit, whose shade shields us, whose pips and stems compost back into the soil on this eastern side of the hill, where lights come on slowly with the dusk. East Jerusalem, with its cacophony of cars and marquees, the green lights of minarets, kindled one after the other, dotting the way far into the folds of the desert. Me'uzines who call out, one leading to the next, voices mournful, undulating, please, so like the shofar cries that drift up these stone stairs. Call us back to where we come from, this umbilicus that whispers a soul to a soul. Your names: Kayla, Pesel, Shandel, Ruchala. You who love to knead the dough, you who danced the hem of her wedding dress to pieces, you who died in the Grodno ghetto, giving birth on a dirty floor. And though we never knew your stories, our souls still told the truth. The death was not easy. This is why we can't sleep. And the wind that once blew cold in Belarus, now hot and dry over this eastern hill. No more lamplighters. We are Nava, Odelia, Yael, and electricity now scrambles the light between the words. Whispers rise like mist, a simple wish that wherever we are, we can hearken back to the sweet pink of a western sky, the last kiss of daylight as traffic fades. The stars unveil themselves, the me'uzines now quiet. Wherever you are, tell us why we need any answers. Tell us what any light would reveal. Okay, and one more poem from the book. I think it was sometime in the 90s, in the very first confrontation that Israel had in Gaza City after, actually it must have been in mid 2000s, after the first confrontation where Israel soldiers entered Gaza City and started to fight there, because Gaza was a part of Israel after the 1967 war, and then it was given to be the first part of Palestine in 2015. So sometime after that, there was a battle there, and a man with a couple of kids at home was on reserve duty, and he was in a room in Gaza with his soldiers, 9 other men that he was responsible for, and he hand grenade dropped in the middle of the circle of folks. And this guy was the katzin, he was the sergeant. And in order to save his soldiers, he threw his body over the grenade and took the force of it and saved everyone else in the room. His name was Roy E. Cohen. So in thinking about that story when my children were in the Army, and in the book, I talk about how close my son came to getting killed in and around Gaza. I wrote this poem, Life Lessons. This is what you were always taught, to lay down your body over the body of the grenade and allow its explosive force to enter each soft cell. Here's what you were always taught, to protect, to shield, to allow the grenade's fury to enter you, sending yourself out in shards into an empty universe. And here's the thing they never taught you, to leave behind only what can be gathered and buried, to run and run with 70 blessed kilos on your back. Here's exactly what you were taught, to allow those around you to survive while you hold the grenade to your belly as if it was your own cold heart. So, Salam of Birds. It's available on Amazon and I guess other places. Thank you. All right, so the next book I'm writing, one of the criticisms of Salam was that it was a book of witness and that it wasn't personal enough. So I decided to write something much more personal now. Right now, the manuscript is called According to His Will. In Jewish morning prayer, we get up and we bless everything, bless waking up, bless the sun rising, bless the going to the bathroom. There's a whole series of morning blessings. But at one point in the blessings, the genders diverge. Men say, "Blessed are you, O God, who didn't make me a woman." And women say, "Blessed are you, O God, who made me according to his will." So this manuscript is called According to His Will, and it's basically, I guess, a little study in misogyny, or what it is to be a woman, and yes, it's a much more personal book. So before the wind, the moment you knew you, an invisible dust brushed your face. Skim of cobweb or breeze on a humid day. Turn, touch your fingers to the spot where there is nothing. You know what's coming. A tidal wave so far away you can't yet smell its salt, hear its growl. You know it'll take your family, each of them, as easily as reaching out a finger. Tuck that stray hair under your kerchief. The wind hasn't risen yet. The carpet could use a going over, and the morning's coffee cups rest still in the kitchen sink. Within each, dead air, and a circle of grounds crystallizing. Cranes, and this poem has a line by Milosz, Czeslaw Milosz, the poet. Cranes. I wander past the furniture store, stiff brocade, slick cherry wood, overstuffed ottomans. I could sink myself into any seat just to think about that line. I am a woman held fast now in silence. How betrayal makes me quiet, as unfinished as the etching of cranes here on the side table. Not their white wings fanned across the clouds, but long necks carved to slump toward the simple wishes of water. Snapped back legs set before ferns, whose many shades are chiseled in green leaves, sequined in sunlight. And of course, at the plowed edge of everything, great gray stones, each cut heavier than the next, in accordance with the molecular weight of sorrow. scream. She says we need to go together to an appointment, a date, a time, a room where a professional, crossed legs, slight forward tilt can mediate her anger so it won't destroy me. That this anger will pass by my head like a hot wind coming up from a subway grate, a wind filled with filth rushing from an earth warmed by some devil's fire blaze, a wind I need to feel but not make my own. There's never an appointment. We never go. She says she needs to tell me, open her mouth, let out the scream of a woman, of a teen, of a child, of an infant, cold and hungry, new from the womb. It doesn't sound like something we can do in a cafe, I say. Let's try the beach, I offer, where wind, soft, salty off the waves, might carry away the gray rage, offal rising like dust, its scent dank, its scent dry and empty as a subway, the clank of the wheels that scratch around unseen curves through soot-ridden tunnels, the sudden open bathroom brightness of each station. Can any Mediterranean wind whisk away such a scream as this? I'm reminded of a house in Gush Etzion. You need to sign up months in advance. The Jew sits quietly while the Palestinian spills his grief, a torrent of sounds forming around generations of pain. Where, I ask myself, is God? I'm sorry, I tell her. You are right. You entered the world cold, naked, afraid. My milk never warmed down to your toes. The mirror never reflected enough of you. The sting of your father's hand on your cheek. Yes, the world is scary and sick, possibly ending. Yes, it's my fault. Open your mouth, I say. Open and let it out. Someone Else's Livid Day. So this is a poem about epigenetics, which I assume everybody knows what epigenetics is, but it basically that when you go through terrible trauma, your cellular structure is changed, and that passes on to the next generation. Someone Else's Livid Day. The headline doesn't mention epigenetics, but startles with words like trauma and Holocaust, and a bright picture of DNA chagalled in space, curly-cued in dots of protein held magnetically on their given lines, like a corkscrew of music or the barbs of an electrified fence, the fence behind which the children stand, each tied in a dirty rag that covers their ears against the freezing Polish wind, whose sighs for someone else, bellies distended, even the tendril of a girl who sways near the others, eyes demanding to be held, arm open to the number tattooed there, and on her son, years later, whose vicious fists will writhe against Yid and Sheeny, or later her grandson against Jewbag and Zog, each printed in a rope bridge code deep within the children of those lucky enough to survive their own ravenous seasons, displayed in crisp reality as each DNA is unrolled like a Torah scroll, read out loud each Shabbat, memories that drag a language into the marrow, into the bones, into the savage hand of someone else's livid day, spread generation to generation. Look deeply into the DNA of my own children. There you will find me, a little girl, dark hair too long and torn underpants, unconscious on a tiled floor because I couldn't remember my times tables. I think the only thing you need to know here, a couple of things. In Jewish, on TV, when Jews get married, they're under a canopy, they step on a glass. But there's a few other things. Jews wear very heavy veils because of the biblical story of Leah and Rachel. The guy sees the woman and puts the veil down, and often that veil can be very heavy, where the woman almost can't see. And then she's taken, once she comes under the canopy, she's taken by her mother and mother-in-law, and they walk 7 times around the future husband, the fiance. And another word here is saxifranged. Saxifrage is a flower that grows out of a rock. Quilting. Rainbows flow under my hand, yet arrests in pressed edges, bordered, backed, and bound, as all quilts are bound, always bound, the binding tight all the way around. Women's work, and we too, winter imprisoned. Centuries of sitting rooms, stuck on couches, damp and delicate, too soft for sunshine or work. Myriad colors of thread locked inside a hoop, bound to the needle in and out, breath, breathe and hold, even as fingers dance over your whalebone stays, bound under a wedding canopy within the circumference of gold, bound behind white veils, staring at the tips of your shoes, mothers holding your elbows on each side, circle you round and round, 7 times the confines of a husband, bound in windowlessness, closed doors, belted and bound in company, hair and elbows covered, nose and chin. Can I drive? Learn to read? Breasts bound in China, feet folded tight until the crack, and what remains bound inside infant-sized shoes. To stand upon them is to sway like grass and breeze, but there is no breeze, just girls, cut on the bias, saxifranged, small and alone, flower arms stretched, but rooted in stone. So this is an ekphrastic poem, and in here is a mention of Vashti. That's from the book of Esther. Vashti was the queen for Achashverosh, and it was said that when Achashverosh would have these big, huge parties, and Vashti had to show up naked. And it's also in some of the commentaries it says that Vashti had a tail. So after viola phrase, painting Untitled, backside standing nude with extended arm. Blackbird, no backside or reside or step away, back, no back, but backside, the naked back, and yet still blackbird or black cat or black shadow of her selfhood, her shame, perhaps throwing on a black dressing gown, perhaps slipping it off. They say backside. They say, Vashti, they say, had a tail. Take off your clothes, woman. Show my friends how I wear my kink, how I wrap myself in the droop of you, how I take you, dip my end into you. Woman with tail who, when commanded, must pretend shamelessness, unfold her midnight wings. So what is shame? Can we name it? Overcome it? A black shadow envelops me. Please don't see my naked ass. Stop sending me away so you can see my tail, my crawl, my hot cheeks, my rumpled sheets, my phobias of appearing visible to others. What does it help then? That flashed image, Adam, Eve, their arms snaked across their private parts, fleeing. Death notice. Shame died on the day woman stood up, the day she stopped taking the blame, stopped saying sorry, sorry, sorry. When shame saw the 2 thick trunks of legs, the dark calluses of feet, the stains under her arms, when shame smelled the scent of her sex like something overripe, enticing appetite and queasiness in equal measure, shame knew the end was near. No mirror would welcome the power she held. The mirror preferred its own echo, ugly, stupid, bad, bitch. It was then she threw the mirror down, let the music of its shatter cascade through her body like the chimes of a church bell, like the dance of a harp. Shame gasped, but the woman only smiled, her face ecstatic, eyes closed, mouth open, teeth bared, and the breath leaving her in heaves. It was then she reached her hands out to her sisters, pulled them to their feet. Each stood, one, another. Each held in her hands a symbol of her power, fruit or branch. One held up the snake. Many held up their breasts, supporting them from underneath, so they stood too, as in their youth, round, as if still filled with milk, round, as if holding wholeness, holding grace, as if holding the whole round earth herself. And this is my last poem. 8 Sides Life. Break away or break on. A wave breaks, and us? Like a two-fisted dance, like the movement of wind, like a kindness so gently shared, it takes a moment to realize it was kindness. The body and what it brings. Dawns that yawn into a cluster of ruby clouds, the pillow of your lips, kind each time, and just as pliant. The cat who cleans her paw with her tongue, crisp as a surgeon, each 8 sides licked slowly and with precision. And then the whir of your hands, your touch, lush, yes, lush, this lushness, this day. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for reading for us. We are so honored. Thank you. On Zoom, I do this for applause. I don't know if you've been noticing that between poems, but that's what that is. In sign language, that's what that is. I was just been sitting here thinking about, because you mentioned Vashti, and I was thinking about, as far as the Bible goes, Vashti's successor was Esther, became Ahasuerus' wife. And I was thinking, I really can't imagine her consenting to show up naked to parties, because the way that Esther is usually taught is that her modesty is what gained her favor in the eyes of the king and his servants. And so it's like, So that's an interesting, a whole, because I didn't know about that tradition before. So it's like, I have to think about that for a while. It's interesting what gets passed down in the oral traditions versus what ends up actually getting written, and how those go together. And sometimes they don't, but a lot of times they do. And working that out. And that poem about the epigenetics, that was wow. That was wow. Just a reminder, everybody, feel free to speak up in the chat if you like. Remember to check the chat. People often say very nice things about you while you're reading, but because you are reading, you're not looking at the chat. So be sure to check that out so you don't miss things. Because people do often say very nice things about you while you're not paying attention to it. And our next reader, I guess I'll let Justin go next. Justin Hamm is joining us from Missouri, from Mark Twain country, I believe. And I'm currently reading his collection, Drinking Guinness with the Dead. And I'm not very far into it, but he is a good poet of plays, similar to Rachel. She's very much a poet of plays too. She writes a lot about Israel and stuff. He writes a lot about the Midwest and really everywhere he goes, but you can tell when he travels, he's very in place in the moment, which is something I'm trying to learn to do. Just be in the moment and enjoy, and not be too worried about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. So seeing that in Justin's work is really helping me in that way. So if you're up, Justin, have fun.
Yeah, thank you. I'll let you guys know right now, you may get introduced to Mac and Bear, my dogs. They are, somebody's going for a walk out there. And so whenever I do readings in the house here, every once in a while, they like to leak in with some barking. So we'll just pretend that's the backdrop, the rhythm to the poems, and it'll be okay. So, but I thought I would let you guys know that.
We're dog
So
friendly.
yeah. So this is my new book, Drinking Guinness with the Dead, and I'm kind of mid tour with it right now, doing quite a few online events and a number of in-person events as well. I'll be flying out next week on Friday to do an event in Detroit and Toledo in person, and then I've got a couple more virtual events in May, and just kind of getting all over the place with this book, and it's been really awesome. And so what you had said about place, a lot of times when I travel to do readings and things, I gather up more, right? And so with you kind of throwing that theme out there, I thought maybe I like to organize and read according to themes sometimes and come up with them on the spot. I thought maybe I would do some place poems for you guys today. And I'll do a couple of Midwestern ones because that is a bulk of what my work entails, but also some other places that I've been as well. So kind of dig in and see things that we have in here. So, maybe we'll start in Iceland. And I've got 3 poems here from Iceland that I'll read. And this first one is about the first flight that I ever took. It was from Chicago to Keflavik in Iceland, which is where the airport is before you go to Reykjavik, and then you're kind of in Iceland proper. So this is called First Flight Chicago to Keflavik. At 30,000 feet, I photograph the sunset, fall asleep and dream of the time my old man dropped 5 feet from a ladder and bounced off the winter cold concrete outside our trailer, eyes rolling in white, low gurgle of panic humming in his throat. When I wake an hour later to a new sun, I realize the hum is only the groaning of the airplane's engine. Through the clouds, I glimpse pockets of glass blue sea 6 miles down and consider how cold it must be among the whales and porpoises. I press closer to you, find that place on your neck, the scent by which I'd know you if my eyes turned to ash or my ears sealed with rubble. Before we left, you spoke of a will. I avoided it. Now, the first song on my playlist shuffle, Jeff Bridges, Funny How Falling Feels Like Flying, for a little while. I pull my earbuds out, surrender to the engine, try to decide if 30,000 feet is high enough to actually make out the old god's laughter. So this is a fun one. The name of this little peninsula in Iceland is called the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. And it was very fun when we were in Iceland to go around, and the Icelandic people were they like to watch you try to pronounce things, and then they would get very excited for you when you would get closer to it, but I think that they took like a pleasure in watching like Americans fumble their tongues around words that they couldn't say and be kind of foolish. So that was a fun experience. But this is the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, which for my money has got to be one of the most beautiful places on the entire planet. So even the name is uneven, tumbling off of unaccustomed tongues. Sheep hunkered under hillside rocks, beautiful squat beetle-maned horses, lava fields brightly mossed to the horizon, and fishing villages bluffside, guarding beaches the color of absolute night. In the distance, Snæfellsjökull, both volcano and glacier, like a cold star rising toward the slurred light of the auroras. I remember the tiny coffee cups, interlacing our frozen fingers, puzzling over Kjarval the painter and squinting the ancient sagas to life. The way the air everywhere smelled, but only faintly, of sulfur. And finally, how the old grudges melted as we saw the pure absurdity of anger in a place where the very earth beneath our feet constantly rumbles with uncertainty. And I'll do one more Iceland poem. So This one makes a reference to a famous James Wright poem. It's the one that he wrote about finding the horse, and I'll have to think. I can't think of the name of it right now. It's always on the tip of my tongue. But he and Robert Bly were on a drive in Minnesota, and they saw these horses on the side of the road, and they pulled off. And he had this like incredible moment. And I had a similar experience in Iceland, and it was both beautiful in the moment, and I was also realizing that I was sort of living a James Wright poem in that moment. So if you don't know anything about Icelandic horses, they're amazing. They're incredible, beautiful, beautiful animals. And in fact, the Icelanders are very, very serious about it. You're not allowed to own anything on the island except for a purebred Icelandic horse, because they don't want to ruin the DNA. And, they're just, nobody really, ownership is a sort of loose thing about the horses there. Yes, people own their horses, but like everybody just kind of knows their horse and their horse knows them, and they kind of run wild all throughout the island. So it's really kind of a beautiful thing. This is called In Iceland One Afternoon I Touched a Horse. In Iceland one afternoon I touched a horse, a lovely, smooth, blonde-maned horse, friendly, muscular, half wild, and my heart/soul did not heal. Not exactly, but I was pleased to find myself in something of a James Wright poem, thinking to hell with performance evaluations, weed whackers, and research on variable interest rates, straight to hell with pistol-cocked egos and moral Puritans, thinking as I petted his velvet forehead and stroked his tan muzzle, and he pressed into my armpit, that for a minute it was good to have no cell phone service, to stand and touch and breathe, to watch the sharp peaks pierce hazy clouds in the distance, to have immediate quarrel with neither humankind nor wind, to whisper soft and adoring and foolish American nonsense into the ear of this proud horse, this lovely, smooth, blonde-maned horse, this muscular, friendly, half-wild horse I was fortunate enough to touch one afternoon in Iceland. So we'll go from Iceland to, let's do Ohio County, Kentucky, 1985. It's where my family comes from. And so this is based upon a dream that I had that also mixes up a real experience of returning there. When the coal company bought my grandfather's like ancestral land, they bought it up and so that they could mine it. And he knew that his grandfather's barn was still standing on the property. And so he took me back. He wanted to see what was in the barn, if there was anything that he really wanted to keep. And actually the mantle that was in the original house is now in my house. That was something that we took out of the barn. So it's very, very old. And this is about that trip. Ohio County, Kentucky, 1985. 1. I stand in our ancestors' field, all of Kentucky a green inferno at my back. I stand there in one shoe, grandmother trying, God damn it, to get a hold of me so as to spit shine my filthy face. Grandfather picks through the warped wood barn for his history before the coal company has its way. The air in this place is ripe with some kind of weather. 2. They called my grandfather's grandfather the preacher, and that is what he was. This land was his land. He rode these back hills in his black coat, carrying the hidden ear of judgment close to his heart. His whip, they say, he kept down inside his saddlebag. I see him that afternoon, me, as I told you, in his field, in my one shoe, don't ask me how. And when the corpse of him opens its vast red mouth, the crows pour out like the shadows of 1,000 diamonds. 3. All around us, insects whine. All around us, Kentucky, like one great green blaze of summer. Grandmother closes in, reaches for the sleeve of my t-shirt. I see the dead man out there on his mount. I hear him speak the bodies of those dark birds. I know the family secrets. I know all of them. The sky's now the color of healing bruises. I look up into grandmother's hoarse, wild eyes. I let her catch me. Let's see. Try. This is a short one. It's called A Moment in Kansas. And I don't know, you guys may not know much about this, but like Kansas and Missouri have quite the rivalry, state rivalry between each other. And so whenever I read this somewhere in Missouri, like people, they're always react. They're like, why in the hell would you write a poem about Kansas? Or they'd be like, why would you even want to have a moment in Kansas? Nonetheless, I went to Kansas and I had a moment, and then I fictionalized it a little bit and I made a poem about it anyway. So it goes over better in Kansas than it does in Missouri. A moment in Kansas. Somewhere in Kansas, a night train torches through the dark stomach of the prairie. The man in the car on the rural route turns his head for just a moment. He wonders if he has ever made his father proud. But only a moment. Now he turns from the disembodied flames. At the crossroad, he signals left. The engine hums the ballad of whatever comes after. So we'll go from, we've got a few of them in here. So we'll go to Hovland, Minnesota, which is up on the North Shore. If anybody's ever been up there, we did some camping up on the North Shore of Lake Superior. It's beautiful up there. And we also stayed in this small cabin that had an incredible immigrant history. And so I think it was Norwegian immigrants that had landed there. And the man who first landed in this little area became he built a fishing empire. It was kind of incredible. Like nobody had really stayed there or inhabited it before. And then he showed up and was like, there's a lot of fish here. And so he started catching them. And then like other immigrants were like, this looks like a really great place to go and fish as well. And so he stopped fishing after a while, and all he did was build a hotel. And then when the boats would come up on the lake, they couldn't come all the way up to the shore. And so he had he had a boat that he would row out and like bring the people over to the shore so that they could go up and stay in the hotel. And he became sort of like a fishing lodge. And that's how he made all of his money. So it's a pretty interesting story, but that's the fellow that gets referred to in this poem, the ghost, if you think of it that way. Hovland, Minnesota. The girls finally tire of their wild dances. The sun begins to slide behind the pines. I sit upon a driftwood throne, watch waves break white against beach rock. At the far horizon, sky and water cease their slight division, melding into a single blue. Meanwhile, my own mirrors, ages 9 and 5, seem to grow a little further from me every day. But on this night, they come in close. We huddle together in a tattered old quilt, and I tell them tales of Ole Bruns, the first immigrant fisherman to build in this bay, the storms he battled, the cows he sailed up along the coastline from Grand Marais. Many others since have fished this rich spot where the flute reed flows into Superior. They also love daughters, and they watch now with a jealousy only the dead have earned. I feel our impermanence like a wild storm inside my bones. Draw the quilt tighter against the bluster and chill of the fisherman's breath blowing off the big lake. Whatever news they're whispering can be dealt with later. It is nothing the children need to hear. And I'm just going to do a couple more real quick. These aren't very long. This one's called Colorado. I sit beneath the first sun, yards from the cautious mule deer, and name myself by parts. The right arm of insignificance, the left eye that also matters not, the heart about which no words need be said. The mule deer grows easier with each new erasure until he finally moves near enough to touch. But too late. I have receded into the mountain crags, turned memory like morning fog. And I'm going to end right here with one that comes right back to where I am right now. So this one's called Storm, Rural Missouri. Though the coming rain announces itself by rustling the distant corn, the barns remain immutable as weathered gray monks. Without words, they pray over the dog who sleeps forever in his soil bed beside the oranged relic of a horse-drawn plow. On rage the blood sugar wars. The lust for nicotine continues. The time-crumpled angels pull on their Carhartt robes and stand under wide awnings as lightning unstitches the sky. Here, every storm is 40 nights from stating the profound. There's a little, thank you for going on a little tour with me tonight. I appreciate it. This is Drinking Guinness with the Dead. It's available. You could buy it directly from me, which is kind of the preferred method, or it's available in all the normal websites that you would look on to buy books. So thank you guys so much.
I really love in your work that I've read so far, and it came through in your reading today about how rooted you are to the earth that you're standing on at any given time, and that you're interested in the stories of that earth, the history of that earth. And because I think that's important. You know, if you really want to understand a place, you have to understand its history too. But I feel like also that we kind of only have heard half the story. Like your great grandfather's land, if I counted that correctly, and you in Kentucky, and also that cabin you were talking about. I wonder if you were able to find out what happened before that, like with the native tribes that lived there, and how they felt about those places. I can just see them fishing in that river, you know. But I do think that's. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I did actually
awesome.
look into some of that too, and that was a rich spot for natives to fish prior to that, and so it was not a case of like so much of the the land in America. It was not the case of natives being driven out of that spot, but it did have some historical significance as a place of fishing. It was right where Superior and this river came together, and there were so many fish. It was like they had inside the cabin, they actually had the letters that this guy had written, like they had collected them, and you could read them when you were there. And so you're reading what he was talking about. And he was like, it was nowhere he'd ever been. Like you didn't have to try. You just could reach directly into the water and just grab the fish. It was just silver with fish all the time.
Wow. Yeah. I just love how you're interested. So not just in the moment you're in, but you're so interested in the place that you're willing to look into that stuff. And I do think that's important because it helps you to understand. I think when you're interested in your family history and you're interested in the earth that you're on, it helps you to be more firm in who you are as a person. You're more confident because you know the backstory that led up to you and the struggles that your ancestors went through to get you here. And it makes you more confident as a person. It makes you see what qualities you have that you got from them that you can use going forward. I think it's very valuable. So I appreciate that about your work. That leads us up to John Compton. And John, I really like his poetry. He has a gift with a turn of phrase. Like he can be saying something in his poems, and you're like, oh, yeah, I know where this line is going. And then suddenly it goes somewhere else instead. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I know where it's going now. No, it's just constantly twisting to surprising places. And I absolutely love that. John is from Kentucky, like I am. And so we have a lot in common in that way, too, although he's still in Appalachia, but it's more foothilly where he's at. And I'm more very much mountainy. So he's a little bit closer to the central of the state than I am, just a little bit. But we do have a lot of shared experiences due to that, too. And I think that helps his poetry come alive for me a little bit. But you're up, John.
Where I live, we have the inverted mountains. They go downward. We have sinkholes and caves and
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, so
we have
are you closer to Mammoth Cave then?
oh yeah, like 20 miles away from it.
Oh yeah, I've been to Mammoth Cave then, so I know the area you're talking about. Yeah, it is very, very dippy. I called it dippy.
We have a lot of inverted mountains. We have a few big hills, but they're not really mountains like where you're from. And thank you for that. It makes me honored about what you said about me. Now I'm shy to read. To live up to the expectation. No. And I just want to say thank you, Rachel and Justin. Oh my Lord, you're amazing poets. It's an honor to hear you read. Also, I want to say I'm the host of the JoJo Show, and Justin's going to read on that soon. And that's daily, so that's been real fun. And I also have Voice Lux Press, and our next chapbook for May and June is by Sabne. I probably butchered your name. I'm sorry.
Everybody does. It's Pulp is where I got it from. I got it from and I don't. This might upset people, but I didn't mean it to. It was a different world then. But there was a list on the internet when I first got a computer of names from these villages in Poland that the Nazis would just completely wiped out the entire village and it no longer exists. But they had lists of names of these people, and Sabne was the first name of one person, and Raznik was the last name of another person, and I put it together for a pen name. I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but I am sort of always been interested in the Holocaust, and I needed a pen name like right now in that moment. So yeah, but it's hard for everybody to pronounce, and I kind of wish I had thought that through a little bit more. But anyway, Sabne Raznik.
I think it's like what is it? It should offend anyone. I think it's holding that up, because then you get to talk about where you got it and what happened, and so it's like a remembrance for me. That's what I think of it as. But yours is coming out next, which is really exciting. So I just wanted to say that also. And I want to say one more thing. The JoJo Show sponsored a poetry contest for anyone who wants to enter, and the winning poem gets $100. So everyone entered that. Okay, so now I read. So I'm gonna read out of my second book, Stranger in the Attic of Clouds. And I love the cover, and Diane did this. I can't pronounce her last name. It starts with a P. She's brilliant. And I seen this a few years ago or so, within a timeline of the last 2 years, and I was like, this has to be a cover. And I finally got this book out, and the title fit with it very well. So I'm gonna read some poems out of this, and you can get it anywhere, I guess, Amazon, whatnot. And so the first poem I read out of it is called, it's a little one. It's a haiku. And well, it's not really, because I titled it. But it's like a haiku. It's Elegy of Leaves. Echo under the tree. Each leaf is a poem torn from a manuscript. And that's that poem. And then the second poem I'm going to read is called Seamstress. You sew their wounds to fix torn flesh and mend draped skin like curtains to conceal exposed interior. You quilt their body back together, patch by slender patch. And that's that poem. And this poem is about growing up and leaving places and then coming back to places to see how they've changed. So it's called Exile Extinct. Space illuminates the empty yard. The toys are gone. The dog is dead. The house sits stark. Years have exchanged these things. Quiet looms. The finale of a lost war where death snatched every last voice. In previous memories, I burned old poems in the driveway, watching a thin trail of black smoke vanish into the dark. And that's that poem. And then I'm gonna read this one. It's small. It seems that people seem to like it. It's kind of like psychotic. Um, it's called Let's Cuddle. I need to clean my blade in your blood. Let me tuck it in the pocket between your skin and bone. And that's that poem. Yay. Thank you. So the next poems I'm going to read, I better look at the time. I did no preparation. I don't ever prepare for readings. I just read spontaneously. So I always just watch the time. If I got 20 minutes, I read until my 20 minutes is up. That's how I roll. So the next one is from my chat book, from my huge chat book. It's like 50-ish pages. Sarah Ethelzine and Micropress accepted it, and it'll be out in September 2023. And I'm very excited about that. I love them. This is the second one they've accepted from me. The first one was really tiny, cute little book, but this one's gonna be like a chapbook tome. It's gonna be huge, and I'm so glad she accepted it. I love their stuff. They make like beautiful art pieces. She hand sews the manuscripts and everything, so you're getting like an art piece with the poetry. So the first one I read is the first line is also the title. And the title is We Do Not Have Auditoriums. We do not have auditoriums to read our poetry. We have audiences of trees, yet they don't listen much. They rattle leaves to silence, to hypnotize our ears and shut our mouths, to investigate past birdsong and dancing squirrels, to witness the fear from circling saw blades and tires churning through mud. The fields bare, branches burn and mass piles. Smoke is a death's reminder, crematoriums. The house fills with the spirits of the woodland, while their bodies break into embers, their beauty into gray ash. Flames destroy their existence and leaves their remnants scarring the ground. Our mother closes the windows since the air begins to choke us. In time, the sky becomes benevolent, the horizon more transparent, and the sun inquires forgiveness for being meddlesome. And that's that poem. And that poem is about, we lived next to like this big wooded area, and it was really beautiful in the trees, and it kept the storms away from our house because when a tornado hits or whatever, and there's lots of trees that ends up destroying the tornado. And these horrible people, and I say horrible because they're horrible people, they have a past of being horrible. Well, anyhow, they bought all this land and all this woods, and then they just tore it all down, and now it's a big giant open field. And so they put all the trees in piles and caught them on fire. And it was so smoky and you couldn't breathe or anything. And it was horrendous. And it was really sad because the trees were big, beautiful trees. And now it's just an open field of ugliness. And they've done nothing with it. They bought it, destroyed all the trees, and it just sits there now. It's like, why even destroy the trees? So it was crazy. All right. So let's see. This next poem is my poem about loving oneself, because I used to be bulimirexic and my go weight was 0 because I was dumb. Um, I didn't think bones and stuff weighed anything. I thought, no weight was beautiful, because when I was growing up in America, back, it's still irrelevant, but back then it was really big, skinny, be skinny, be skinny, don't be fat. And so now I'm on the chubbier side, but I love myself and I love food, and I'm gonna die happy, and I'm gonna die with a greasy cheeseburger in my mouth. um, and love yourself no matter what. And you know what? I'm gonna say a dirty word, but it's meant in the best way. Fuck anyone who says otherwise. They're not living your life, and they're not helping you through your life, and they're not paying your bills. So you know what? Screw them. Be you. Be happy. Be voluptuous or chubby or soft or whatever you want to call it. Because you know what? At the end of the day, you gotta be happy with yourself. And other people saying stupid stuff, they're just jealous to see you smile, because they're going through hell trying to become this god or goddess, when really that's horrible. I tried the workout thing. Let me tell you, it's not fun. Ugh, it takes too much energy. So I wrote this poem a love poem to myself. I want to sew stones inside pockets of skin. Tired of floating, let me sink in the uninhabited parts of soft fat, plush and kept warm. Your belly noises and rhythms, heartbeat, exhale, heartbeat, inhale, a rumble of stomach, the giggle hollow from your lungs, through your chest, to my ear, to my brain. I love you in many languages, yet the silent kind is best. And that's that poem. And it might not be the right poem I was thinking about, but you know what? That speech was necessary. Um, I don't. That just might have been a love poem. But I was thinking, I wrote one about myself too, but the speech is always necessary. So so this one is also untitled. Sometimes I don't know where I am. Like when I first got on here, I took a nap and I woke up. I don't even know who I was anymore. It was the best nap I ever took. So um this one, me and my friend was writing haiku. We would give ourselves like an idea, and we'd be like, we had like 1 minute. So we'd basically write whatever popped out, and then we fix it up a little bit. And we wrote 3 pieces, and then I realized mine can go together. They like flow into each other. So here's that one. The wind blows between trees, hammocks burn. The embers watch the dark. Roots twist from dirt, snakes. And that's that one. All right. And if you hear any sounds, that's my dogs. I have 5 dogs and 2 cats. They're not in the room today because yesterday or the day before, I was doing my show, the JoJo show, and my cat started slinging things down from the shelves trying to kill me. And so I figured today I didn't want to die. So they're all out of the room. But yeah, and it was funny because I was joking with the person. I was like, yeah, I was like, sometimes, my cats, they're rambunctious, and they're just, they just do crazy things. And all of a sudden, like 5 minutes later, a flower pot comes falling towards my head. I was like, oh, that's lovely. Um, so yeah. Oh, here's the poem. Okay, I made that big speech and then read the wrong poem. So this is the I don't know. I don't know anymore. I'm gonna read this poem. It's probably the poem. Um, it's not titled either. Fingernails over skin like fat blades, pricking the immense lance mass. Lingering, eager, blood river beats through the dam. Heat rises as the afternoon falls. The dusk blends with eye color. Exhausted, night emits sleep. And that's that poem. All right. Oh, here's a poem because I'm horrible at grammar and spelling. I can't spell or do grammar to save my life. I'm miserable at it. Luckily, there's people who correct me, and I love those people. They're brilliant. Um, so I made a poem about my horrible grammar and spelling. I am dressed in mistakes garnished over my body like an appetizer. Taste the fundamental smallness from sweet imperfections scattered throughout. The savory rolling off my skin. The E instead of a double O, an apostrophe mistakenly placed. And that's that. So the E and the A part is then and than. Don't know which goes where. I've given up. And then the double O, like two at TO and TOO. Can't can't 20 years of writing, still ain't figured it out. People have tried to help me and it just gets lost in my brain. And then the apostrophes with stuff sometimes, they just go wherever they want. But yeah, um so let's see. I'm gonna read this poem. It's about one of my fur babies. We had 2 years ago, which seems like just yesterday, we had parvo that decided to enter our house, and we're not sure how. Because we've lived here for a while, not some parvo in it, and we lost 4 of our babies in a week, and it was horrendous. And I had a mental breakdown. It was very bad. So I wrote poems to the babies, to our children. And so this one is about the first one, and his name was Whiny because he was, he was whiny, but he was had separation issues, how dogs don't. Yes, but he'd whine and he'd always want to be on us, and we thought he had a stomach. We didn't think it was parvo. We hadn't. I mean, I hadn't seen parvo in many moons, and so we didn't know like it was parvo until it was way too late. So we thought it was a stomach ache. Dogs get stomach aches just like we do. So we thought it was a tummy ache. And it's called Before We Understood That Death Was Here. We thought you had a stomach ache. We thought it would pass. We thought we could save you. We never thought you'd be buried below the grass. We thought you'd wake one morning and return to your normal self. We thought we'd get you back. We never thought you'd die at the vet. We thought we'd watch you grow, play, and give us laughs. We never thought you'd sleep and wither frail like a vase full of petals, vibrant in an empty shell. We thought for too long. We thought you into the ground. And that's that poem. All right. I'll read one more from here. I believe I have enough time. All right. I'm not big on war. War is stupid, I think. I'm not trying to be rude to anyone or whatever who thinks otherwise or there's a purpose for it. American wars are stupid. Let's just put it that way. Our wars are greed and money and dominance. That's what I think. So so I wrote this poem. Because they war. Yes, war is dumb. Because they war. Write about how many bullets can fit into 7 mouths. Start a war. Cut holes into their bodies. Get used to seeing graves. Children fit inside easier. Blood drains, making floods. Wash evidence. Pain is too easy. Dismember torsos. Remove arms and legs. Rewrite each name into each stone chest. Decapitate the heads. Place the eyes face down. There's no need for seeing. Crying is faint echoes of wind. And that's that poem. All right, so this next one I'm going to read a poem or two from is from my full-length manuscript that is floating around and hopefully I found a home soon. and it's titled The Castration of a Minor God. And so these poems were published in a Thin Air magazine. The only reason I mention it is because I haven't got the magazine yet. Um, it should be to me soon, and so here's a peek, everyone. Um, and the wonderful Tommy Sheffield edited this, and I was always afraid to have an editor because I'm OCD with my poems, but they're superb, and they like set right in my head and became me, and didn't brutalize my poems. They made them how I would have made them if I could have thought of what they helped me with. Anyhow, this one's titled His Hair Went Up Like a Wick. Lost in the atmosphere, wanting the flames to undress my body and ashes cover my mother's face, I want to remember a beautiful sun. Um, the slashes are like part 2 of the poem, I guess. When I killed my only dear, I cried. It wasn't that she was dead, but alive, observing her blood. She fled from her eyes. My father told me to shoot her again, not evil, but love. The second bullet would be peace, where the first forgot its duty. And that's that poem. For some odd reason. Oh, thank you. All right, so. Lord Jesus, if this went down any faster. And I want to read this one. It was published in an anthology. It was published in a magazine, then anthology. I think it was published in a magazine. I don't know. Well, it was published in an anthology, and then the anthology was titled after this poem. And then it was my first poem to be nominated for Pushcart. And then the last line always bugged me. And then this is one of the poems Tommy helped me with to make better. And to think, and I'll explain it more, but to think one word can just be the most devastating word ever. So it's called The Men Who Made Bonfires. They took 2 men from their bed, nude, and bound them after their on-site trial. They dragged them from their home, their secret revealed, and forced them to the town square. They held them up as a vile distrust, and laced their bodies, each bound inside a tire filled with gasoline, for all to see the monsters burn, their disgust in flames, what 2 men shall never gain. They clothed them in fire, made them women in orange dresses, dancing. And that's that poem. And so the last line was originally something else, and then we changed it to dancing. And to think a word as dancing, and when you think of dancing brings joy and happiness, and then in this, the dancing is horrible and sad, and I was like, that is wow. So that's that. And I want to read one more poem. I think it's time for one more poem. I think I've been reading for 17 minutes. I'm gonna read this poem, and then I'll end. It's called, and this is a new poem, and hopefully it's in a chapbook I'm making for a publisher, and hopefully they'll love it and accept it. It's called Dark Luminary Things. The mattress knotted from years of misuse, a lump like a mound of hard snow, and 4 holes. Our dogs hide their faces in and bark. Do they hear an echo? I imagine groundhogs. Pretend spring will arrive early. Envision flowers, modest and bright, blooming from frayed edges. Threads ingrain their way into the floor. My room is an ecosystem, tempting, trillions tipping. And that's all. And thank you for letting me be here, and thank you for letting me read. And thank you for listening. And I'm so honored to hear everyone who read.
Well, um, I am a big fan of trees. I absolutely love trees. So yes, I'm outraged about your people who bought your house too. And I think that you mentioned haikus. I have really been into reading haikus lately because it seems to me like the perfect form of poetry for the pandemic, especially the lockdown part of the pandemic, because whenever your world becomes small, you focus on smaller things. And that's exactly what a haiku is. I'm not talking about its size. I'm talking about, they tend to focus on a crack in the wall, thinking that's kind of what being in lockdown was like. It would be like, there's a crack in the wall. Where does it go? And not because you were bored. It's just you had a different perspective on life. Because you were living in smaller spaces.
And two, I love being by myself. I'm a super introvert, but let me tell you, lockdown even had me going stir crazy.
Yeah, well, even introverts need some human interaction.
I was talking to dust bunnies, the walls, the grass. Oh my Lord Jesus! I finally just would go outside and start walking in circles. Like not circles around my yard. We have like a road that goes in a circle. I just don't want you to think I was weird walking in circles. But
circles around yards before. I've been interested in haiku before, but I was never able to sustain that interest very long until the pandemic, because it does seem to me like the perfect poetry form for the pandemic. There's just something about it that's me. And so I thought that was interesting that you mentioned it. I'm sorry about your.
That's okay. Thank you, though.
Yeah, I'm an animal lover too. So.
Oh yeah, your dog is amazing, so sweet and wondrous. I love when you post the posts about your dog and stuff. She's like, and I hope this isn't too much. She's your little guardian angel, she's always there to show you and protect you and she, you know what I mean? So she's like your little guardian angel.
Well, she's my service dog. I trained her to do that. So
you know what though?
Some days that's
even
go ahead.
Sorry. There's still, there's dogs or whatever, but there's still that connection and that, that understanding.
Yeah. And, there some days she's better at it than others, but then dogs are not robots. So they have moods too. They have good days.
Yeah, just like you. Sometimes we're better at things one day and not the other.
Okay, well, that pretty much wraps up our reading. I thought I would read just one poem from my manuscript that's coming out because it literally drops in 2 days. But this isn't supposed to be my reading, so I'm just going to do one. And also, I thought it would be okay since Jerry Hardesty wasn't able to join us, and my thoughts have been with her all evening. So I hope she's all right and everything. She has a good outcome for her. But I have missed her. We've had. I love this reading, though. People in the chat, they were talking about the variety of the different kinds of poems. So I think it went well. This poem is called Summer Rain, and it's from my chapbook Dreaming of Bono that's coming out from John's Press. And the name just went out of my head. Give me a minute. Voice Slugs on May 1st. So Summer Rain. I can taste the salt Dublin breeze on a soft morning on Windmill Lane, while here the trees are stilled and heavy in dog day heat, weeping humidity into the overgrown Appalachian ground. I wonder, do you remember your stray dog teenager days, as well as I remember my suicide yearning in a room with bright yellow sunshine walls? It would take me longer than you to feel like I was worthy to keep living. We believe too much, you and me. I have more stories to tell than I can properly recall, but no one would believe them as well as you would. That's because the world will only believe in what contains a lie, you say, squinting at the unforgiving sunball and shedding your leather. Such a shocking lack of water, you observe. glibly. Nah, it's just more concentrated, so you have to look for it like a treasure hunt. Breathe in. That's the river, I say. God can't lie. You half grunt, half chuckle. You need some sea, and that's my point. We sit in silence, the locusts rattle in trees as summer personifies a third wheel. Seamus, meaning Seamus Heaney, Seamus had more faith in the world than you, I say, though he expressed it more cautiously. And I have more than you do. The only person you believe in is God. The rest of us are assumed guilty. You wipe sweat from your brow and watch Twitter-pated birds. Guilty, yes, but loved all the same, sure. I'm afraid someday you and Seamus won't visit me anymore, so I take your hand and squeeze it, feel the liffey between its fingers. You're right, I say, as you dissolve into rain. I need some sea. So that's coming out literally in 2 days, and I will be dropping the link on my social media when it does. I thank everybody for coming to our reading this evening for our National Poetry Month. I hope you enjoyed the poets and each other as much as I did. Thank you so much.